From the land of sky blue waters, welcome to the Sota Pod. Isha join me here alongside Seth Toupal, who will be joining us momentarily, and I thank you all for joining us wherever and whenever you are listening. We got a big show planned for you guys here today. A lot of Minnesota Wild talk, still some free agent signings trickling in around the National Hockey League, players being mob affiliated, and more. If you guys are watching on YouTube, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. And let's get right into it. Right before we bring on Seth to talk about some hockey, I just want to give a big shout out to our friends at Northland Vodka. Now, I'm going to be pumping our friends up here at Northland Vodka, but I also want to say that we have a Hoppy Hour segment coming at the end of the show as well after we talk about hockey. So stick around for that, whether you're listening on the audio side or the video side. On the audio side, we have something a little bit different than on the video side. So as always, if you're listening, go check us out on YouTube for the full experience of the Sota Pod beer tastings, vlogs, the whole 9 yards. And if you're on the video side, well, you pretty much already have the full experience. But if you do want to listen to us on the go, in the car, while you're working out, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the whole 9 yards. And I know our friends at Northland Vodka like to listen to us as well as they're hitting the links, as they're driving to a ton of their meet and greets and tastings, which they are still hosting at various locations, at various events, at various liquor stores for the remainder of the summer. Northland Vodka is the best damn vodka in the United States, ladies and gentlemen. A great local company. Mark Parrish and Co. are such great people and amazing to work with. He has the best vodka recipe, in my opinion, in the world. But right now, 100% you can say in the state of Minnesota and in the United States. Whether you're using it for mixed drinks, whether you're drinking it straight, it's amazing. I can't say anything other than it is amazing. And you know what's even more amazing? A small percentage of every single sale goes back into the community, goes back into local hockey. So what are you waiting for? Go get you some Northland Vodka today. Follow them on social media to see where they will be located for signings, tastings, meet and greets for the remainder of the summer. Northland Vodka, a proud supporter of the Sota Pod. Without further ado, let's bring on Seth Toupal from Locked on Wild. Back with my good friend and yours, Seth Toupal from Locked on Wild for our Hockey Talk segment here on the Sota Pod. How's it going, Seth?
Going good. Hard to believe we are already about 2/3 of the way through the month of July. Where'd the summer go?
Stop.
I know. But we'll have preseason hockey in September, so it's not that far away, and then the NHL season will get going. So keep the summer going as long as possible. Maybe add another month to it, but then after that, it'll be hockey time.
But I mean, Seth, is that a good thing or a bad thing for Wild fans going into this season?
It depends on if you are glass half full or glass half empty heading into the season. It depends
or if
on
you're just a hockey fan, I guess, in general, because like, hockey overall is starting, and if you watch college, high school, junior hockey, then it's just a all-encompassing package. But if you're just a Wild focused, we'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting because I saw an article that said a boring offseason for the Minnesota Wild for the first time in a long time, and I'm like, well, we kind of expected that this would be the case. And so now it's either team kind of rises to the occasion, or you suffer a similar fate that happened last year where they miss out on the playoffs. And you would think after 2 seasons of not making the postseason, it may not result in personnel changes, but you think it'll definitely result in some roster changes.
Yeah, I mean, I you said it there. No one really expected a lot of movement, a lot of change. Anything of a lot of noise this offseason. I feel like all the noise was made at the draft, and that was all positive noise.
Yeah.
I feel like if there was a lot of noise to be made in the offseason here, people would still find a way to bitch and complain about it. We know the players that are under contract. We know that based off a lot of the team's performance, seasons cut short due to injuries, etc. It was just a bad year all around last year for most of the players, right? That for the players anyways that a lot of us want to see moved, now is not the time to do it. A, no one's calling. B, there's no value there. So the movement, the changes, the adjustments, if they're going to happen, and there are going to be some this season, I guarantee that, they're going to come when the season starts. They're going to come, in the first quarter of the season, perhaps the second quarter of the season, hell, maybe even some out of training camp, as we've talked about for a little bit, or for a few weeks now here, Seth, both on your show, Locked on Wild, and here on the Sota Pod. If some of these rookies impress, Riley Heidt and Liam Ugrin in particular, there's going to have to be some movement on the roster.
Yeah, this is the, I think, biggest question facing Wild fans, facing the organization, facing those that cover the team, is if you have those young guys impress to the point that you say, we got to find a spot for them on the roster, then what happens? Because you've got guys with various levels of trade protections. Now, obviously, if they see the writing on the wall, they don't necessarily have to waive those. But if you were to go to a guy, I'm just going to use Marcus Johansson as an example. Like, let's say Liam Ogren and Riley Heidt both make the team. It's probably going to be one of those two guys in that second line spot to where Johansson's playing time is going to be bumped down further in the lineup. Does he at that point kind of see the writing on the wall and say, yeah, I'll go to somebody that just suffered an injury in training camp that needs somebody to play in that middle six? Yeah, I'll give that an opportunity a go. The key, like you said, the key is in training camp, because the trade conversations regarding Philip Gustafsson seem to have quieted down. The trade conversations regarding Marco Rossi seem to have quieted down. All it takes is a team that is in contention, let's say Nashville, for instance. Now, you may not necessarily trade within the division, but a team like that who is 100% in on a cup run, suffering an injury, and you have players in the wings that you'd like to get a look at to see if they are capable of filling some of these spots in the lineup. And maybe you have a veteran player that can provide a steadying presence to a contending team. That's the point in which those conversations are going to be had. It's all about how these young players play. If they play well, if they show that they're ready for the moment, that's going to force Bill Guerin's hand. If they don't, we're not going to see a ton of moves roster-wise heading into this season. And then it'll be the offseason when we see more of them. It's all about how these prospects develop. If they show they're ready, then Bill Guerin has decisions to make. And until they do, that's just kind of where we're at.
Well, I mean, we've kind of already heard from Judd Brackett from the Wild Brass that, like, Liam Ugrin, the plan is for him to be part of this team. And by the way, for those who are fans of our new show under this Sota Pod network, Fellowship of the Rink, Liam Ugrin will be Joe and Hoppy's guest this week on the podcast. So just a little teaser for you guys there. The kid has an exceptional English, and he's ready to play. And even Judd Brackett alluded to the fact that, like, we've seen enough of this kid to know that, like, he's ready for the National Hockey League. So, like, the biggest question is Riley Heidt. Like, if Riley Heidt is ready, then we talked about this last week as well. There might be some, Liam Ugrin might have to spend some time in Iowa until the Minnesota Wild can make room for both of them, for him in particular, to be on the Minnesota Wild roster due to Riley Heidt not being able to be sent down to Iowa. But I have a question here, Seth, because you brought up Marcus Johansson's name again as a possible trade chip. And, like, look, I'm totally down to use him as a trade chip, because I still think, despite him going on cold streaks, there's still value there. Like, he actually put up some points this year. Now, he went on various goal scoring streaks, but he was never really a goal scorer, right? Like, he's only had 2 years where he had 20 goals and above, both of those being on the Washington Capitals on a sheltered third line where he was getting easier matchups. He was always a guy to bring the puck into the offensive zone, to be part of the play. Okay. Now, again, I'm not trying to defend him too much because I know people are going to, sharpen their fucking pitchforks and try to break into my house here, which, by the way, I do have bars on my window now. Shout out to St. Paul Steel. Thank you, St. Paul Steel. Not an official sponsor of the podcast, but they have helped me quite a bit. I really don't know why Freddie Gaudreau is not the name that people throw out. Now, I know harder to move that contract with the clauses involved, but like Freddie Gaudreau is one bad year removed of 2 really good years. Why aren't people hating on Freddie Gaudreau? Or why are people hating on Marcus Johansson more than Freddie Gaudreau? I don't get it. Because for me, all season, I want to see more from Marcus Johansson? Absolutely. But I am not. And I'm sorry, I'm not a fool. I never had any expectation of this guy to be a goal scorer for this team. I watched him develop in Washington. I've seen him play throughout his whole career. I know what he is. And last year, did he play up to what he usually is? No, but he still contributed more than freaking Freddie Gaudreau, who had a nosedive last year, an absolute nosedive coming off 2 really good seasons with the Wild. So I ask you, Seth, because you even brought up, like, you're just guilty of it as well, that you brought up Marcus Johansson and not Freddie Gaudreau. Why is there not the same amount of hate for Freddie Gaudreau that there is for Marcus Johansson? I really don't get it.
Well, I think it comes down to the spot in the lineup, because we have seen Freddie Gaudreau play higher up in the lineup. He was part of the 2 years ago. He was part of the Boldy, Gaudreau, and Johansson combo that played well when Joel Eriksson-Ek was hurt. And I don't think anybody viewed him as like an impact portion of that line combination, if that makes sense. Like, he was able to produce, but he wasn't one of the guys that was driving what that line was doing. And so I think there's just this expectation that eventually when, and a lot of it comes down to the usage with Dean Evison. Dean was giving him opportunities, up and down the lineup, left and right. Key faceoffs in critical stretches. He was giving him pretty much every opportunity that there was when he needed a play to be made. When John Hines took over, all of those opportunities went to Joel Eriksson-Ek, because John Hines was like, Joel Eriksson-Ek is my go-to center.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, you would hope that Joel Eriksson-Ek would be the guy. But then I think our expectations went to, okay, well, we're starting to see that Freddie is clearly a bottom 6 guy. And the thing for me is I just always watched that second line wanting more. Like, it was a key struggle point for the Minnesota Wild after they went to Kirill Kaprizov, Matt Boldy, and Joel Eriksson-Ek as their top line combo. That second line, they struggled to produce. And so that's not all on Marcus Johansson per se,
who's not a finisher. I got to point that out there again, right?
Yeah, it's true. It just, a lot of the time that I watched him play, I just was left wanting more because of where he was put in the lineup. If Bill Guerin and John Hines did not play him on the second line, we're not having this conversation. But the fact that he continued to be put in that line, in that spot in the lineup, the expectation is that your top 2 lines are going to be the ones to score. It doesn't matter who the goals come from. Once the goals dried up, then you look at everybody on that line and you're like, well, who's not pulling their weight? And, Marco Rossi certainly carried as much of that group as he could. I've been critical of Matt Zuccarello's performance, which was largely tied to power play points this past season.
Yep. But another distributor, not a finisher, which is why what Rossi did was so impressive. It just, and look, 100% fair points there. I get that with the distribution and everything. I still will, I will not budge from the fact that Freddie Gaudreau's decline last year, despite where he was in the lineup, even if you look at his special stats and even his plus minus, like, nosedive, bro. Absolutely. He's a minus 23. So he wasn't helping this team even in the bottom 6, right? Again, I just don't understand the hate. And it's not necessarily just like, I'm not putting it all on you because you made a great defense there. I don't get it from the fans. So like Marcus Johansson gets all like the terrible nicknames and all this stuff. I see it all the time, even in Judd's Bud's live chat. Everyone's ripping on Marcus Johansson. All the comments is ripping on Marcus Johansson. And like, I get it. He wasn't good. He's not a true second line center, despite him being deployed as one on this team and our expectations for him being higher, and rightfully so. But like, I don't understand why like Gaudreau's the one that people don't, or I don't understand why Marcus Johansson's the one that people want out over Freddie Gaudreau when they make the exact same amount of money. I know maybe Freddie Gaudreau might be a little bit harder to move, but like at this point, no one's really calling for either of them.
Well, and I think there was, in Gaudreau's case, there was an injury during the season that I think people are more willing to use to explain his lack of production. I don't know the extent of the injury, but there was the hit against Ryan Reeves early on in the season that knocked him out of the lineup, and it took a few games for him to even be pulled from the lineup, and he just clearly was not the same guy. But it's all about guys pulling their weight. And I fully agree with you that I think the fact that Freddie Gaudreau, from my estimation, was signed to the contract he was because the team wasn't sure what they had in Marco Rossi. And now that you have Rossi clearly capable of producing at an NHL level, you're left with a guy who has really no chair, because you've got Joel Eriksson Ek, you've got Marco Rossi. The expectation is that Marat Huznadinov will be probably your third line center. Freddie Gaudreau is at this point probably a fourth line guy. And so you're
which
giving
proves
a guy,
my point of
get
him the fuck out of here, because you can come to him and say there's no opportunity here for you anymore. We know you're capable of putting up 35 to 40 points. Let's find you a home, especially if he starts off the season not looking absolutely horrendous, in which he looked like last season. Again, compared to Marcus Johansson, which didn't look good, was not great, but wasn't horrendous. Keyword horrendous, Seth. Last season, he went from, and I get the diminished time, but still, you have a point reduction of that drastic, plus going from a plus 10 to a minus 23 with easier matchups. Because it's not like he was the shutdown line. He just played the easier matchups and had less minutes, and you were still hurting your team. It just blows my mind back to the point of like why Marcus is getting more hate than this guy. It's just crazy to me.
Well, and you look at that line construction, that second line, like you mentioned, Matt Zuccarello is a facilitator. Marco Rossi is a get to the net guy. And so my head kind of goes to, for that combination to be more successful than they were at the end of the season last year, they needed a shooter. They needed somebody to be able to create opportunities for themselves, take setup passes for Matt Zuccarello, and allow Marco Rossi to clean up on rebounds. They needed, so maybe the bigger issue is that it just wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, maybe
for what those other two needed on that line.
Yeah, maybe we should be ripping the coaches a little bit more for continuing to trot that out there, knowing that like us fans, we can see it. We can see it literally looking on the stat sheet. We can see it literally with the eye test. We can see it literally with the analytics. Why was this? And again, maybe there just wasn't that guy, and it was like, this is what we have. We have to go with it. But I just wanted to bring that up there because it kind of triggered probably the wrong word, but it's just something I keep seeing. And as we started off this conversation, it was just like, man, here's the name again, Marcus Johansson, which I get wasn't great, man, but 30 points in 78 games. I don't care where you were in the lineup, compared to 15 in 67, 5 goals, dash 23, coming off a season where you had 38 points and 19 goals. I get it in 82 games, but still, like, it's just wild to me. It's wild to me that like the pitchforks aren't being sharpened for Gaudreau and everyone's blaming Marcus Johansson, when if you are a true hockey fan, I'm sorry, you know what this guy is, and that is not a goal scorer.
Well, I think I'll put it this way. I think the pitchforks for Johansson are far louder. I wouldn't say that there aren't pitchforks for Gaudreau, but I think they're just far quieter than the noise surrounding Marcus Johansson.
Right. I gotta make my pitchfork sharpening noise louder than for everyone in the back.
We are only going to have to worry about this for one more season, and then Danila Yurov will be taking that roster spot what happens with Freddie Gaudreau at this point is anybody's guess.
All right. Let's talk about the top six. We've talked about the bottom six. We've talked about Freddie Gaudreau, Marcus Johansson, who really belongs in the bottom six. And maybe he gets some, Marcus Johansson, maybe get some time in the top six again here. But actually, I was talking to Hoppy before we started recording here, and he was saying that he was listening to Judd Zolgad's show, hockey show on Score North, and he was really, really bullish on keeping that top line that you just alluded to together to start next season, the top line of Ek, Kaprizov, and Boldy. And Judd was not wavering from that line, saying that that is the top line, no ifs, ands, or buts. Do you agree with that, or do you think it should be a little bit more fluid to start the year? And if so, what are some of the combinations that you want to see in that top line, and then as a result, that second line?
I agree with Judd.
And let's work under the assumption that either Heidt or Ugrin are on the team, whether that influences your lineups or not.
I agree with Judd first and foremost, but here's what I will say: that's your ace. If you're putting together a deck, like a deck of cards, that line is your ace. And end of the season, from February 7th to the end of the season, they were the second best, at least from an expected goals percentage standpoint, second best line in the entire NHL, behind McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, and Hyman, which not bad.
Yeah.
But you're not going to get through a season with one primary line combination. That's a hope, but how often does that happen?
Well, someone's getting injured.
Players get injured.
This is
Players go through slumps. You maybe have somebody who plays well above what you'd expect, and you want to try to promote them, to give them an opportunity and just get a look, see how guys look. And so I'm calling that the ace, but one card does not make a poker hand. If you're playing 5-card stud, you need other cards to fill out your hand. And so that's where some of the conversation I think has come in with, well, maybe we go to Zuccarello and Hartman with Kaprizov to see if those two can't get going, because the key is for your lineup to be clicking as much as possible all at once. And you look at the chemistry that Boldy, Kaprizov, and Eriksson Ek had. It was pretty obvious, but it's also probably your three best players offensively. So you'd assume that they're going to have some good chemistry together. And where some of the conversation has come in is, well, if we can get Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Boldy all hot, maybe their stretches of play can be spread to other players to try to get them going as well. But here's my thoughts on this. Boldy, Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, I think gives you a line that you can put toe-to-toe against pretty much anybody in the NHL and say, this is our bona fide number one. The key is that you are going into the season not really knowing who is going to fill that wing spot on the second line. And coaches don't really like to deal with uncertainty. You want to have a rough idea as to what that lineup's going to look like before you go into the year. This is where the cast of characters comes in that could potentially win that spot. Liam Ogren, Riley Heidt. Think about how good that playmaking skill set would look opposite Matt Zuccarello and Marco Rossi on that line. And so I think the better approach to how to fill that spot this season is, what does that line need? What do those two guys need? We talked about it a little bit in the open. I feel like they just need somebody that will shoot the puck, will get set up by Zuccarello for a one-timer, and will fire one on the net. We'll get a good feed from Marco Rossi in close, and we'll just hammer it home. A tried and true shooter on that line, I think is going to allow those two guys to really maximize their skill sets. Rossi getting to the net, Matt Zuccarello as a facilitator. So that leads me towards, Liam Ogren is a shooter. He's got a nice size component to his game. And so I think he's somebody too that can really help you in close, like a proximity type attack with Zuccarello and Rossi. The other guy that I go back to, because he's pretty good at bumping up and down in the lineup, if you don't end up bringing Riley Heidt for the season, maybe Ryan Hartman gets that spot to start. Hartman is a shooter. He brings a nice physical component to his game. He's played with Matt Zuccarello before. The thing is, it's a situation with going to previous combinations that worked. It could work. It also couldn't. And so I like the idea of, here's what we're going to go with. Let's just try to kind of flesh some things out. Maybe try some of the young guys in that second line spot and just see if they're capable of holding that role down. If not, if you put Ogre in there and it doesn't work out, okay, then you move on to the next one. But I think it's I like the idea more of just trying to kind of find lightning in a bottle with a line combination, as opposed to, well, this worked 2 years ago, so let's start there and see if it works again. Because if you go Kaprizov, Hartman, and Zuccarello on the top line again this year, guess what? You've got Boldy and Eriksson Ek on the second line. Marco Rossi's not playing that wing spot, so you still have to try to figure out who's going to be that second line wing.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think Hartman's playing center anymore for this team because he doesn't need to.
No.
And he can play wing. He can take key faceoffs for you still. Look, not every center on the team, I should say this. There's a lot of wings sometimes who will take key faceoffs because they've developed as a center, but not as a center, playmaking center in the National Hockey League, but have tools and maybe some better tools in some areas than other guys. I can't say that enough. Hartman's he's very good in the faceoff dog, but again, Rossi is not bad either. I love all of that, Seth. Now I've been going full like Charlie from It's Always Sunny here, trying to like mix and match these lines, and I'm also operating under the assumption that like training camp guys might be pushed out of spots. Yeah. And again, that might have to force the Wild to make some moves, to make some hard decisions, to try to send some guys down to Iowa. And if they get claimed, they get claimed, whatever. Am I out to lunch for thinking this to start the season? Kaprizov, Rossi, Zuccarello to start. Am I out to lunch to want to see that? Because then it's like, okay, Rossi, let's see if you are a fucking top line center. And if you are, what better guy to eventually take the torch away, or to take the torch from Zuccarello as the main guy for Kaprizov when Zuccarello eventually, leaves this team. Now, Zuccarello, he plays his best with Kaprizov, so why not just have him in that mix right now, because he still can skate.
I don't hate it. It was a combination that was used at points throughout this past season, and from what I recall, that was those are some of the best games that Marco Rossi had. But here's the thing that I like. Here's the reason that I am so adamant about Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Boldy is because one of the things that I think have wanted to see more from Matt Boldy is just the consistency. Like, how are you impacting the game on the nights where you're not scoring?
Well, how about I give you my second line then, and let's see if your tune changes. Ek, Boldy, and Ugrin. Because Ugrin can do both. Ugrin is just as good of a shooter as he is a puck distributor. Look at him in the last World Juniors. He had bad puck luck, hitting the post left, right, and center, but where he dominated was setting up plays, being patient, and being even that first pass guy where he might not have even been credited with an assist, but you knew he was the one who was like the quarterback, right? Ugrin, Ek, and Bull, I don't know. That really tickles my fancy.
That has intrigued me as well. I wouldn't mind. And look, throughout the course of a season, we're probably going to see all of these anyway. But I wouldn't hate that at all. Honestly, it comes down to which player you feel would benefit most from what Kirill Kaprizov has a clear ability to do, which is kind of raise the play of those guys on the line with him.
And what guy would you want him to raise other than Rossi this year?
It's either Rossi or Boldy. Those are the two guys I think that I would want to benefit from that the most.
But I think Boldy's going to score 30 with or without Kaprizov. He's that good. Now, consistency wise, you want him with a running mate that can keep that consistency. And who better than the guy he did it with last year, Joel Exarnek?
I also think on the Boldy side, he just had a bizarrely weird start to the season. He had the one goal through the first 19 games of the year,
and then he got going. Yeah,
he was injured. After that, he's basically a point per game guy every game that John Hynes was the head coach. And so, maybe it was just as simple as kind of a different coaching style that held him more accountable for his performance than Dean. I guess we'll see. But, I feel like either Rossi or Boldy are in good hands with Kirill Kaprizov on their line.
Because one of Heidt or Ugrin is going to be in the top six. You have to.
That we're getting to the point that I think is the important one, is that your top six is going to feature most likely somebody like Liam Ugrin, and I think that's the big win. I think that's the big win that we're looking for, is getting a guy like that an opportunity, not filling a roster spot and playing 6 minutes on the fourth line, like getting an actual bona fide opportunity to showcase his skills in a top six role that this team really need. And so I think whether it be Rossi on the top line with Kaprizov and Zuccarello, or Boldy, Eriksson Ek, and Kaprizov, I think the fact that it looks likely that Liam Ugrin will or somebody will take that spot on the second line, I think that's the big win.
And I know I said we were going to keep this, top six focused, but like kind of now by process of elimination, and I know that there's going to be some guys that are left off this, but like third line, I'm honestly okay with Johansson, Murat, and Hartman. Or if Heidt makes the team as well, dude, throw Hartman on the fourth line, because let's be honest, in this Minnesota Wild team, other than the first and second line, like the third and fourth line are going to get probably equal amount of minutes, similar amount of minutes, and the fourth line will be used more of a shutdown role. Dude, Johansson, Murat, and Heidt, and Hartman goes to the fourth line. It's Foligno, Hartman, and Trennan or Gaudreau. Who gives a fuck at that point? But if Heidt makes the team again, like Gaudreau or Johansson or someone's getting traded, right? Like one of those two guys. But Murat is the bona fide third line center, and they would need a finisher, especially if Johansson's part of that mix. Which again, Johansson has been a career. When Johansson plays well, other than that one little stint with the Wild that everyone now holds him on the fucking pedestal for, he has been a third line guy, right? That's his thing. So, it's just going to be so interesting to see even the bottom six, if both of the guys make the team in Ugrin and Heidt. If only one of them does, then the top six is going to be more of like the interesting focus. But if they both make the team, then it's like, now we get to play around with that third line with Murat.
I would say Hartman, Foligno, Trennan would be a pain in the ass. And
again, I hate that we have to call that the fourth line, but it's going to be we'll just say it's the fourth line, but that is the shutdown line.
That's a pain in the ass line to play against. And so, it is interesting because, Huznadinov is more of a defensive center. So you either can add some offense on both one or both sides of him to kind of help bring that part of his game along. Or maybe you see Foligno, Huznadinov, and Hartman get some opportunities to stack up together. I think the important part of this is having combinations, getting looks, and seeing what guys look like together as combinations. Because the thing that we saw with John Hynes throughout the years, he's not afraid to mix lines up in game.
No, for sure.
That was something we never saw with Dean Evison. It was
exactly.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
He's not afraid to mix it up. And so if he sees something in training camp, if he sees a combination that looks good for a game, he's probably going to file that away and say, if we play this team again, or if we play somebody similar, and we need a particular look late in the game, don't be surprised to see that.
Yeah. And as much as I agree with you that like Murat is more of a defensive forward, I would label him more as just a two-way guy. Like I don't think there's no offense there as well. Like if anything, like Johansson is more not of a defensive forward, but more of a it's weird to say, but like Johansson doesn't have that finishing ability that, you know, we haven't really seen Murat have at this level, but there's glimpses of it. Whereas Johansson's good at being part of the play, or, you know, the kind of that guy who brings the puck into the offensive zone, where Murat's so good at like keeping the puck away from other players. And then, you know, we really just haven't seen him at the National Hockey League have anyone around him who can help him, that can give him the opportunity to give the puck to, which is why, like, you know, whether it's Ugrin, Riley Heidt, even Hartman, because Hartman can do everything. He's not a Swiss Army knife, but he's USA American Army knife over there. He can do a little bit of everything as well. So yeah, it's going to be super interesting. And again, I'm a glass half full guy. I'm excited to see these combinations here, despite, you know, the Wild not playing around with elite talent. Let's call it for what it is. Like, this ain't no Dallas Stars second line where we're like, what star do we want here? What star do we want there? Superstar, I should say, to not get it confused with the actual name of the team. It's still going to be interesting, especially because you're playing around with young talent and seeing, and Murat's still a young talent. He's going to make the team, but he's still a very young talent. I mean, shoot, man, we saw him only play a handful of games last year, right? So yeah, I'm excited. And to add to that, I'm fucking excited to see Iowa this year with what Matt Hendricks has been doing with the team. Like, oh my God, dude, there's some with Graham Clark, with Sop, like, yeah, like I'm excited. I really am. Now, am I excited because I'm setting my expectations that this team is going to make the playoffs and go on a Stanley Cup run? No, I'm excited to see what we have as we start flipping that next page.
We're not going to see this year, even if we get a repeat of what happens to the Minnesota Wild with just a slew of injuries, we're not going to see the panic as to who can we bring up to be able to fill spots in the roster. Because last year it was Vinny Lettieri, Jujhar Khaira, Jake Lucchini. Like, those were your names of players that were available to help out. Now, this year, you have, as you mentioned, Graham Clark, who is going to be one of those probably first calls if the team needs to bring in a forward. But they've also got Jacob Lauko, who was acquired from Boston. So he's going to he'll be in the mix, 13th forward or a fourth line guy, depending on how things play out. But you've got a couple of NHL vets, Travis Boyd, who is going to be part of the organization too. They signed a few guys with NHL experience so that you're not having to pull a prospect that may either not be ready, or if you're clearly just trying to kind of fill a roster spot, now you've got some guys who could fill a fourth line role, and you're not trying to put a square peg in a round hole. So the organization, in the span of one offseason, really improved the depth, and it's going to be interesting to see how it fleshes out. But it is really funny, Isha, to just see a pretty clear idea of what needs to happen from Matt Hendricks for Iowa. Like, it's pretty clear since he has taken over that there's been a pretty clear direction as to the way that they need to go.
Oh yeah, and dude, as soon as he signed that kid from Kitchener, I was like, let's fucking go, dude. Like, dude, our friend Mateo has who you know very well as being like very dialed in when it comes to just prospects, not even just for the Minnesota Wild, but around the world of hockey. He was like, how did this kid even like slip through the cracks of my radar? He's so good. And the fact that the Wild got him, that the Wild got him, dude, or Iowa got him, because he did sign just an AHL contract.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Not only him, but look at how good Samuel Levi looked in the World Championships. Like,
God, I'm excited for this Iowa team.
The team all of a sudden, the Iowa Wild all of a sudden went from, how are we going to possibly fill our goalie rotation out? They signed like 6 guys. And so you have like A, B, C, D scenarios, depending on how injuries play out throughout the year. And it feels like the organization now has, instead of, I guess, just pick a name and give them an opportunity to see if it sticks. Like, they've got clear cut, like, okay, this is the way we're going to go. If we have injuries, if we need to call somebody up, they've got options, and options is something that is important for not only an NHL team, but for the organization as well.
Absolutely. I know we mentioned Riley Heidt here, so I want to segue into Team Canada. They announced their big invitation list. So I think it was 40 to 45 plus players to the Summer World Junior Showcase Camp. Now, again, a lot of names here for those who are watching on YouTube. It is on screen. There is one notable name. One notable name who's here, Seth. One notable name who's here hiding in this list. And that is a kid from the Minnesota Wild and the Prince George Cougars, a name that was left off of Canada's roster last year, Riley motherfucking Heidt. Bro, I know the Americans won last year. Congratulations. I won a little bit of money and I bet on them too. But, dude, one of the reasons why the Americans won and Canada didn't is because Riley Heidt wasn't on the team. So I ask you this. How happy are you to see Riley Heidt on this team? Well, and again, he hasn't made the team yet, but he's going to fucking make the team. On this Canada squad as a Minnesota Wild fan, and how terrified are you to see Riley Heidt on this team as an American fan?
As a Wild fan, I'm very happy for Riley. As a fan of the U.S., I do not care to comment on how concerned
I need you to comment.
It's
as the resident and only Canadian part of this entire Sota Pod crew, I need you to comment.
It's not a comfort knowing that the U.S. team is going to have to try to figure out a way to guard him, something that I don't think anybody really has figured out how to do through this point in his development. But I want to circle back to Brad Bombardier, who had a pretty lengthy media availability at development camp this year. And he talked about giving the Wild prospects the opportunities to go compete at the highest levels, whether it be, in the KHL, winning the trophy there, winning the Calder Cup, winning, these World Junior events. Whatever it is, winning for these guys will be something that they can bring to the organization that helps the organization develop this winning pedigree, and that just extends to the top levels of the organization too. And so it's fun because we are obviously going to be keeping a very keen eye on Riley Heidt, but just look at all these names that were just drafted. I mean, yep. You've got in the forwards, you've got Tidge Ginla, you've got Caden Lindstrom, you've got Seneke, you've got Berkeley Catton, a ton of really intriguing names on this roster. And defensively, Sam Dickinson, you've got Carter Yakimchuk, Zane Parik. There's a lot of talent on this roster. And so the fact that Riley Heidt is a part of that, but I think a part that is definitely capable of playing with any of these guys.
So he's going to be one of the leaders.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing, is that not only is he part of the mix, but he's going to be a focal point on this team.
Dude, absolutely. I just had the key. I'll bring his stats back up here again. If you don't know, we've been talking about him. We've been swooning over him. If you're a fan of the Wild, you should be too, bro. It sucks that he's 19 and that he can't go down to Iowa, but holy shit, man, he is so ready for the pros. And even if he's he's just a cup of coffee in the AHL away from the pros, it sucks that he's not going to be able to get that cup of coffee if there's not an opportunity for him right out of the gate with the Wild, right? But and if that's the case, shoot, man, if he goes back down to Prince George, he is not only going to want to 100% win the WHL championship that year, something they got close to. And I mean, look at his points in the friggin' playoffs too, man. Yeah, I mean, his scoring dried up a little bit, but 19 points in 15 games, man, as they dish the puck out to his line mates, which he is just as much as a distributor as he is a finisher. I would say he is a better distributor than he is a finisher, and that proof's in the pudding. He had 80 assists this year and 72 assists last year, out of his 97 points last year and 117 points this year, respectively. You don't think that this guy who has that 100% drive to win and better himself if he goes to the World Juniors isn't going to make sure that he puts Canada's team on his back despite having a slew of talent behind him. Dude, I don't know if you guys heard the Riley Heidt interview on Fellowship of the Rink. Very committed, serious, no nonsense Sasky farm boy who didn't even think about the scenario of going back to Prince George. He was like, I am going to be on the Minnesota Wild. I am making this team.
Bombardier talked about this too. He said dude put in so much work on the penalty kill this past season because
he's willing to do whatever it takes.
Exactly. What was one of the biggest failures on the Minnesota Wild this past season was their penalty kill. And so it shows you, is willing to do whatever it takes to make the roster. And if that's putting himself in position to, at minimum, be a penalty kill guy, that's a win.
Yep. Absolutely. Again, I said this in the opening segment. I'm very interested to see how things play out this training camp. Okay. As we kind of get off the Wild topics here, and before we wrap up the show, just a few NHL and even KHL stories. I never knew that this was a thing, and I don't think it was a thing, but apparently in a charity game, which honestly, Alex Ovechkin needed this, in a charity game in Russia, they had Russian players who played on NHL teams against top KHL players in a KHL Stars versus NHL Stars all Russian team tournament. And Ovechkin, though we were clowning him a little bit for his weight and him just, quote unquote, not giving a fuck this offseason, scores 23 seconds into the game, Seth. Check this out. They ain't moving too quick out there.
Class is in session, right to the office.
Oh, the shot's still there.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the shot never left.
Effortless.
So a fun little thing that was kind of off my radar. I didn't really hear about this until I was kind of prepping the show earlier today. But it is cool to see that, they're raising money for charity in a big charity game here where top NHL Russian players got to participate in this. The likes of Evgeny Malkin, who else came? Pavel Buchnevich, Artemi Panarin, Andrei Shevchnikov, Vasily Podkolzin, and then for the KHL side, Nikolai Goldobin and Pavel Poradin. So, lol.
Yeah, and never forget that the NHL players blew a 6-1 lead.
Yep. I'm actually surprised that Panarin even had the balls to enter the country again, given how outspoken he's been to Putin.
He has not shied away from that in the slightest.
Yeah. Another funny thing here, which I'm gonna play this video again. It's not in English. It's in Russian. I will clarify what's going on. So, despite these two players playing on the same national team various times in their career, Alex Ovechkin and Evgeny Malkin, they've never been tight. There were stories coming out from in their early years playing when they were very young where there were altercations at, bars in Russia between, camps of Ovechkin and camps of Evgeny Malkin. I can't remember if it was Malkin got into a tussle with Ovechkin's manager or agent, or if it was vice versa. Ovechkin got in a tussle with Malkin's manager or agent. But when they were younger, and this is even before they were 25, they've always had this heated rivalry, which was continued to be heated, and the flame continued to be fanned with how much of a rivalry the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Washington Capitals have had throughout both Malkin and Ovechkin's entire NHL careers, both of them entering the league together. They were both on this charity team together, and even today, despite Ovechkin scoring 23 seconds into the game on Malkin's team, Malkin was clowning him, saying, honestly, he was pretty invisible out there. It was hard to find the great eight. Yeah, he still has a shot, but he moves slow. And look at Ovi's reaction as Malkin kind of goes off.
Он играть не хочет сегодня. И вот посмотрите на его движение. Движения нет. Бросок, конечно, бросок есть, да. Но после первой смены все, его не видно. Где восьмерка на льду?
Мне кажется, нужно ответ здесь, парировать Малкину что-то.
Третий период еще покажет. Он, блин, на синей стоит. Ты можешь вернуться? Стой на синей линии. Тут скорее нету. Так дай пас.
Ну что ж,
So, like, you could tell it's a little playful, but, like, Ovi smiled after the case. Ovi smiled after the case. He wasn't smiling when Malkin was kind of, you know, playfully, but maybe steeped in actually some reality there. He said, and I quote, "He doesn't want to play today," said Malkin. "Look at his movement. There is no movement. Of course he has a shot, but after the first shift, that's it. You can't see him. Where's number 8 on the ice?" And Ovechkin responded saying, "The third period, I will show everything." Now, the final score in the All-Star laden matchup was actually 8-8. 8-8. And Ovechkin was named the best player of the game. Funny that it ended 8-8, given his number there. But I don't know. Like, what's your reaction to that? Do you think Malkin was just like, you know, we're friends now, I'm just trolling? Or do you think it was steep still with some healthy competition, given their whole career? It's been, I know everyone says it's Crosby and Ovi. And yes, but in Russia, it's been Malkin and Ovi.
Well, and they've had no shortage of battles back and forth over the years, but I don't know. It's funny because you see like all-star and celebrity events here in the States and how kind of low key it is. Like, I personally, I love this. I love the fact that it's like a glorified charity event and you're still getting a pretty healthy back and forth. Like, it just shows you how serious they are about everything that they do. Because if it was the NHL All-Star game, you're not getting that.
No.
Like,
and some of they're on the same team.
Yeah. It's just one of those things where you're like, man, it's people are playing at half speed and you still got guys that are like, yeah, you need to be way better.
It's like that scene in Goon where everyone with the 2 Russian guys are ripping on the goaltender. Is like, you see this picture here? And it's like the goalie with like a beach ball under his arm. And he's like, you know, it's like a beach ball because you can't even stop a beach ball. And he's like, I'm on your team. I'm on your goddamn team. God,
unbelievable.
Dude, Goon is such an underrated hockey movie. I know. Maybe it's not. What were your thoughts on Goon? You're a movie buff. Hoppy always poo-poos it and says that like it has nothing on Mystery Alaska, it has nothing on Slapshot, it has nothing on Miracle. Where I honestly I put it just under Slapshot, right above Miracle. And I do love Mystery Alaska and I do love Youngblood, but like Goon was awesome, man.
Sean William Scott, just his delivery, like Role Models is just an insanely funny movie to me. And it's a majority of it is because of his delivery of his lines and his overall demeanor. And so any movie that has him in it, I'm going to have bias towards that. But Liev Schreiber too. Come on. Just an unbelievable.
He was so good in that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like the entire cast was perfect.
Yeah, it's a fantastic movie.
Well, the goalie, he's my favorite character. His relationship with the Russian players is so funny, especially like when Sean William Scott's character joins the team and they're like trying to initiate him and the Russian guys are like, let us sign his dick. Let us sign your dick. And the goalie's like, I've been playing hockey my whole life and I've never signed anyone's dick, son. Rule number 1, don't touch my Percocets. Rule number 2, do you got any Percocets? Maybe I'm just more of the stupid comedy type of guy. The Goon 2 was not good at all, but the first one, I think, you know, cult classic. It's up there.
Oh yeah.
But let us know if you're listening or watching on YouTube. I want to hear your ranking in the live chat because like, and if anybody puts Youngblood at like 1 or 2, respect, because like fucking awesome movie too. And if anything, that is even more of a cult following than Goon.
Hockey movies, man. There are some classics out there.
There are, but there's not enough.
I would even consider Happy Gilmore a hockey movie.
Oh, see that? Oh, we might have opened up we don't have too much time to get into this, but note this so we can talk about it on a different show, Seth, because that's a great conversation, almost like similar to the Is Die Hard a Christmas movie, right?
The age-old debate.
Yeah, I like this. But anyways, we do have to move on because there's a couple more things we want to get to, and we got about 10 more minutes here. Let's talk about 2 key free agent signings that have occurred in the last few days. Let's start with Detroit re-signing Joe Veleno. Now, for those who don't know, Joe Veleno has been on Canadian hockey fans' radar for a very long time. A native of Kirkland, Quebec, Veleno became the first Quebec-born prospect to be granted exceptional status to the QMJHL, which meant he played his 15, 16-year-old season with the QMJHL, being able to play more than just, I think it's only like 20 games that you can play, or maybe even less, as an underager. And again, him developing, everyone thought that this guy was going to be incredible. Now, is he a good player? Absolutely. Is he that exceptional status player that he was in his early youth? I don't think that he is. But for the deal that he signed, a 2-year deal at 2.275, I mean, this is considered a bridge contract at its core, Seth. What are your thoughts on Joe Veleno, and do you think this is just positive for the Detroit Red Wings signing to the bridge deal, or do you think that maybe they just should have locked him up for a little bit more money?
I think it's the classic case of like, we feel like we've got something here. We just aren't 100% sure exactly what. Like he's a guy that obviously has worked his way up through their system and followed his entry-level contract up, which is the 1-year deal, kind of a prove it. Let's see what we got. Let's see where we can go. And, as we see on the screen, he rewarded Detroit with 12 goals in 80 games, had 28 points. And so, is he a focal point player on this roster? No.
But it was his third full season, right? As you mentioned.
Yeah. Is he a potential contributor for this roster? Absolutely. And so, it's just an opportunity of like, we just finished with the 1 year that worked out pretty well. So let's just see how these next couple go and see if he can continue to develop. He's just 24. So, still a young player that they've added to their mix, but it's just one of those, like, this works out for both sides because it's certainly a nice raise for him, and it allows Detroit to lock in a bottom 6 piece and see if he can potentially turn into more than that, because they're gonna have some spots to fill. David Perron is gone. Daniel Sprong, who we'll be talking about next, he is off to Vancouver, and so Detroit's got some capability for players to elevate in the lineup, and could he be one of those guys? We'll wait and see.
So at 15-16, he put up 43 points in 62 games. 17, 18 years old, put up 40 points. And he actually won the QMJHL championship with the St. Jean Sea Dogs that year. In his final year in the QMJHL, a whopping 104 points in 59 games, which was unbelievable. And then an interesting development path after junior. Played 1 full year with the AHL squad, where he put up, decent points in his first full year, 11 goals, 23 points in 54 games. Dash 25, though, and I don't know how good the Grand Rapids Griffins were at that time anyways, but, not bad. He contributed at least in his first year pro, and then went to the SHL. Which was interesting, where, again, he produced, but I don't think to maybe the level that the Detroit Red Wings expected him to produce overseas. Comes back and splits time with the Detroit Red Wings and Grand Rapids after that, and Grand Rapids Griffins after that time in Sweden, and then plays a full NHL season, right? So it's just an interesting path, a very interesting path. Again, starting from 14, 15 years old, where they knew there was something special there, and then granting exceptional status coming in the next year, a year younger than everybody in the queue.
Some of his other peripheral stats: 49% from the faceoff circle in just under 14 minutes per night, which was a career high for him in a full season. And 100 hits, and he shot 14% on 86 shots, which was a career high in shots and a career high in shooting percentage. So Detroit, it feels like they think they've got a little something here.
Okay.
And so it'll be interesting to see if they're right, or if it ends up that they look back on this 2 years down the road and they're like, go ahead and see what else is out there.
Okay. And as you mentioned there, the second notable name is the Vancouver Canucks, who signed Daniel Sprong to a 1-year deal. And he's 27 years of age, by the way, to a 1-year deal at only $975,000. So under $1 million for a guy who was a second-round pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins, right? A guy who also dominated in the QMJHL, speaking of the QMJHL, and a guy who put up 18 goals and 43 points last year for the Detroit Red Wings. The year before, 21 goals, 46 points in 66 games for the Seattle Kraken. Did the Canucks get a bottom six steal with Daniel Sprong here?
I love this for Vancouver, because this is one of those signings that teams that are in clear contention windows always make, where it's like, we're not going to be able to offer you a ton of money, but what we are going to offer you is the ability to compete for a Stanley Cup. And Vancouver is very squarely in the mix. Some of the things that I like: 160 shots on goal, Isha. He shot 11.3%. He only played 12 minutes per game.
Jeez.
12 minutes per game, and he still had 18 goals for Detroit this past season. And this was a guy that I kind of had on my radar from a Minnesota Wild perspective as a potential guy to take a flyer on if you really wanted to add somebody to be in the mix for some playing time. And obviously he's headed to Vancouver, but just was intrigued by the fact that he's not afraid to shoot the puck, and he did a lot with not a ton of ice time. So certainly intrigues me, and that tells me, at least from Vancouver's perspective, that he's capable of producing in a limited role, which is just perfect for what they are doing right now.
God, and Vancouver's bottom six is actually looking really good. The fact that Dakota Joshua took a hometown, well, not a hometown deal, but took a deal to stay with the Vancouver Canucks, because he could have gotten $1 million, 1.5, shoot even $1.8 million more, and maybe, and the same amount of years, 4 years, in a different market. And the fact that he chose to stay in Vancouver is huge. He was so good in the bottom six for this team last year.
Yeah, he turned into a potential free agent crush for me. A guy who can give you right around 20 goals and hits like 280 people a season. Freakish. I wanted it so bad, but I rarely get what I want. So good for Vancouver.
And in the playoffs, he was awesome as well. Played for the Sioux Falls Stampede, went to Ohio State University, and 8 points, 4 goals in 13 playoff games. Man, he was so clutch.
Would have looked great in a Minnesota Wild uniform, but no, I can never have anything that I want.
Yeah, and if you just look at, and obviously not all these players are still here with the Vancouver Canucks, but Sprong should fit right in.
Oh yeah,
now, obviously Elias Lindholm's gone. Obviously Zadorov's gone on the defensive side of things, but Makhayev's gone as well. But I think like he might even, whether it's because Makhayev played third line, like Sprong could fit in right where Makhayev left off.
He'd be a perfect third line guy for them.
Yeah. But speaking of Daniel Sprong again, Seth, and you know where we're going with this one. I have 2 questions for you. Okay. A, have you heard about him being a cancer in the locker room? And B, is his dad affiliated with the Mafia? Let's start with A. Have you heard anything about Daniel Sprong being a cancer in the locker room, and that's the reason why he's been bouncing around teams?
No.
Okay, I haven't.
And again,
either.
I'm not super plugged in to the Detroit or Seattle or Washington or Anaheim or Pittsburgh scenes, but I can say from just observing what my colleagues at Locked On Red Wings did throughout the season, I don't recall seeing anything that jumped off the page as to like, this is a guy you shouldn't want to have on your roster.
And it's not like he was traded like every year after. He stayed with Pittsburgh in the organization for like 4 years, for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
He was with Anaheim for, again, 3, right? Or I guess 2. He was with Washington for 3. He was with the Kraken for 2. And
he's another guy
for the whole year last year.
He's another guy that just strikes me as you don't really know. You feel like you have something, but you don't really know what you've got.
Yeah.
And so that's why teams have been hesitant to really fully commit to having him around long term.
All right. I only asked because there was an account on Twitter who responded to a YouTube content creator, Mike Bartner, who, again, I've had my qualms with Mike Bartner. Him and I've actually gone toe-to-toe, fisticuff to fisticuff on Twitter before because he likes to post. No, he's a decent YouTube content creator. I'll give him that. His content is good on YouTube, but he likes to... He must be like monetized on Twitter because he likes to bait people with like stupid fucking pictures or like, lists and things like that. And I just didn't necessarily like fall for the bait. I just called him out for baiting and was like, dude, this is the stupidest shit I've ever seen. Like you're clowning on your fellow hockey fans who aren't going to call you out for this being what it is. And I looked at like the comment retweets. And I was like, all of them are that, saying like, dude, this is a dumb list. We know what you're doing here. So I just want to, preface it with that. But Mike Bartner writes, this dude needs to fire his damn agent. Only $2 million last offseason after having 46 and 66. Then this year, 43 and 76, and gets paid and gets his pay sliced in half with a 1-year deal in Vancouver. And an account under the username Pete___Hughes replied with this, Seth, which raised my eyebrows, and now I am all in on getting to the bottom of this. Western Hockey Scout, who by the way he just followed me back. Get the fuck out of here! Literally as we're recording this, that's hilarious. Apparently, he's a former 15-plus year WHL, USHL hockey scout. Now he's a freelance amateur hockey writer. Seth and I actually tried to find some of his articles. Couldn't find anything on the internet of his publications, by the way. He retweeted and said, Seth, father is legit in the mafia. And Sprong, he's an awful person who's been a locker room cancer everywhere he's gone and is being accused of assault. It's a testament to his skills that he's still in the NHL. He would have been a star if he had decent guidance. Bruh. What? Do you buy this, Seth? Do you buy this?
Well, it's Mafia ties is certainly an allegation to throw out.
Yeah, that's why I'm like, yo, I literally retweeted and said citation needed.
Yeah, are we dealing with like the next Whitey Bulger or like what's happening here?
So he replied to my quoted retweet simply saying citation needed, saying call up anyone part of the Lac St. Louis Lions or the Charlottetown Islanders organization. Charlottetown Islanders, he played in the QMJHL, or any NHL scout who interviewed him back in his draft year and immediately put him on their do not draft list, which he was drafted high in the second round by the Pittsburgh Penguins. There is a reason he doesn't stick on any team for more than 100 games. I replied by saying, pawning it off typical no-base Twitter account. Cite your claims, sir, or you are just another account spitting nonsense. Happy to learn more, but this is not the way to educate. Share those numbers of quote-unquote anyone part of the Lac St. Louis Lions or Charlottetown with me. Because he just said, call up anyone Lac St. Louis Lions. Like I have fucking Lac St. Louis Lion executive or former players' numbers, Seth. And then I also I followed up saying, to be clear, I am mostly interested in your claims of his father having ties to the mafia. He replied saying, I'll share it on screen here as well. If you read between the lines, it's all there. Eye roll. For those listening on the podcast, I'm rolling my eyes bigger than I've ever had. Why father moved the family to Montreal from the Netherlands? Father managed a hockey team in Holland, got caught doing shady shit. Son wasn't allowed to play for Holland. It was so bad, wanted nothing to do with him. They literally couldn't even get him on a midget AAA team in Quebec as they wanted nothing to do with him. He had to play AA, and in Pittsburgh, projected as a first-round NHL pick. I've talked to connected people in Montreal who are like, father's 100% mobbed up. It is what it is. He refuses to share the numbers with me. And I asked him, I was like, bro, give me your source. I want to contact, who you are claiming said that his father is mobbed up. I've heard he followed me back, but I haven't heard anything yet.
I've seen this happen many times on the wonderful website that is X/Twitter, where somebody will state a claim and then ask the person asking to do the research. That's not how this works. If you have a claim, bring something to the table to back it up. That's how journalism works. If you have something you're trying to get to the bottom of, you get sources, you get intel, you get information, and then you state your claim, back it up, and that's when stuff starts to get traction. I feel like there would have been any number of information about this if there's anything credible to it.
Yeah, and so he linked a Sportsnet article that I'm just kind of sifting through right now, and the touchy subject as to why his family moved over isn't really talked about, but one of the reasons why he didn't play in the levels of hockey in which he noted before actually playing for a QMJHL team, which is fact, was because he refused to claim Dutch heritage and play for the Dutch international team. He actually wanted to play for Canada. And so, and you just can't do that on a whim, right? It's like, no, well, you're not Canadian, even though maybe you're a Canadian citizen now, and you're 3 years into being a Canadian, right? So, yeah, interesting stuff here. I am going to get to the bottom of this, Seth, because this literally happened like 15 minutes before we started our show. And I was just like, what the absolute fuck? But the fact that this guy followed me back, I'm going to message him and be like, give me your numbers, give me your sources. We need to get to the bottom of this because, Seth, mob and hockey stories and the link between the two, they're our cup of tea. I know you love that story with the Danbury Trashers as much as I do. And I was just sharing with you how the LNAH came to be before this show as well. And you were like, what the fuck? I need to know more.
Yeah, that threw me for a loop.
Yeah, if I were to tell you guys that the LNAH had ties to Pornhub and the Hells Angels, would you believe me? It's true.
What a world.
What a world. What a claim. We will get to the bottom of this, ladies and gentlemen. We will get to the bottom of this.
Isha investigates.
Yes. Anyways, man, we've gone a little bit over an hour, so we will wrap it up there. A good healthy dose of wild talk and some wild NHL stories. Not weird, definitely wild. What do you have coming up this week on Locked On Wild, and what are we going to be talking about on the Friday show?
It is Prospect Week. I have been really excited to finally get the opportunity to just take a look top to bottom at the organization at particular spots on the depth chart. Who's coming up? Who are the names to keep an eye on? And we're also going to take a look at a couple of prospects in particular. You and I then will be taking a dive into some of the best names the Minnesota Wild have developed from within in their history. So that should be a lot of fun for your Friday.
I like that. I'm definitely his prospect with I'm still on this fucking mob topic. The first thing I thought was, okay, I'm going to find the prospect for the Wild that has any ties to a mob. That is my goal.
Oh my God.
I want to do so much digging. Even if it's like a third cousin twice removed who like did a job for some, who moved money for someone at one point, even if he didn't know, I'm going to find it.
Can't wait to find out.
It's getting late. It's getting way too late. Seth, as always, this is one of the best parts of my week. The other best part of my week is jumping on your show, Locked On Wild. So guys, go check out and subscribe to Locked On Wild on YouTube. If you're listening to the podcast, the Sota Pod podcast via audio form, as always, to get the full video version, the full experience, and to see Seth and my beautiful faces, check us out on YouTube at the Sota Pod. Seth, until next week. Big shout out to Seth for joining us every single week. I got to get to the bottom of freaking Daniel Sprong. Dad being mob affiliated. Again, I started digging and I think this guy is just a little cuckoo, but we shall see. We shall see. He still hasn't sent me any citation. He still hasn't sent me any contacts in which he quoted as being, well, it's common knowledge. But anyways, we will continue to investigate that story. Before we get to the Hoppy Hour here, I want to give a big shout out to our friends at 7th Avenue Pizza. Best damn pizza on the planet, ladies and gentlemen. I'm never going to order pizza again. You don't need to. I'm never going to have a pizza at a restaurant again. Hell, I don't even have to make pizza. And I love to cook. I love to make... I used to love to roll me some dough, make my own pizza sauce, sprinkle the toppings that I like on, but I don't have to do that anymore because the best pizza on the planet exists, and that best pizza is 7th Avenue Pizza, ladies and gentlemen. You can find it anywhere, pretty much everywhere now. Jerry Foods, Lunds and Byerly's, Hy-Vee, you name it. And they have a ton of deals going on as well. Shoot, just a couple weeks ago, they had 2 pizzas for $5.99. I repeat, $5.99 at Hy-Vee. So make sure to follow them also on social media to see where you can find 7th Avenue Pizza locally. They're totally interactive as well. So send them a picture of how you cut the pizza, whether it's squares or triangles. If you have any questions for them on where they will be located, what events they will be hosting, making appearances at as well. Matt and the crew are super interactive on social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. Great local company, even better people, even better products. 7th Avenue Pizza, a proud supporter of the Sota Pod. I hope you guys are thirsty. Let's get to the Hoppy Hour.
First, I'd like to propose a toast to UMD goaltender Alex Stalock. To Stalock! To Stalock!
I love that stuff. Been drinking it for years. You know, I heard they recently decided to add more hops to it.
You're all hopped out?
Welcome back to another Hoppy Hour as I wipe the sleep there from my eyes. Today we have a Pacific Northwest style IPA out of Dual Citizen. Now, me being from the Pacific Northwest, I'm very excited to try this one. We have Dreaming. That is right, the Dreaming IPA from our friends at Dual Citizen, which is a brewery literally right on the border of St. Paul and Minneapolis. So much so sandwiched in between the Twin Cities that they market themselves as both a St. Paul and Minneapolis brewery. Not much more to say here. I'm excited for this one. Let's pour it up. We'll review it. We'll taste it. We'll rate it on Untapped. And you'll see my live, unfiltered reaction to it here. Without further ado, let's pour this shit up. Alright, let's get right into it. For those who don't know, more so than other IPAs, Pacific Northwest IPAs are predominantly hops forward with a lot of citrus. Which, hey, I like the West Coast IPAs. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I like hopped forward IPAs even more than the juicier ones. But I am totally down for a citrus kick as well. Let's just take a look at what we have here. Really cool can art, by the way. Simple but effective. Yeah, I know it's just some squiggly lines, but does it give you that vibe that you're dreaming? Not as much as some of the Drecker, Dream World type can art, but I like it. Simple, sophisticated. It's coming in at 6.8%. Citrus and piney is how it's described here on the can. Not much more to say, not much more to review, just based off the first impression. What you guys are here to see is me drink the thing and see how I like it. So before we review it, before we see what those of you say and rate it on Untapped, let's dive into it here. Cheers, everybody. Oh yeah, wow. This is actually really good. This is exactly what I'd expect and want a Pacific Northwest IPA to be. Creamy off the hop, off the top, but packs a punch of citrus. I want to say more on the grapefruit side, the pamplemousse, more so than even like orange or tangerine or anything in that category. It's very much grapefruit. And it has that bitter aftertaste than a tart aftertaste. But is it also juicy? Yeah, I would say so as well. It's a good balance. It's a good balance of that pamplemousse. It's a good balance of that citrus and grapefruit, even though it's definitely more grapefruit forward as far as what packs that citrus punch. And it's piney. It's piney. I don't think it's too overpowering. Would I personally like a little bit more of that hoppy, piney taste up front? Yes, but I think that's just more of a personal preference. I think overall, this is actually very well balanced. So tasteability through the roof. I actually really enjoy this. Drinkability, I don't know if the pine / hoppy taste of it is as balanced with the citrus. I do just taste grapefruit more than anything, to be perfectly honest. But having said that, it is rather refreshing. I don't know how many of these I could like just crush in a row. I'd probably have to have one of these, have something else as a palate cleanser, then go back to it. But like, tremendous nonetheless. I mean, look, I'm already halfway through. I'm gonna have to pour a little bit more here. It's as advertised. I like it. I love grapefruit. So the citrus part of it I am loving. I just wish it was a little bit more hoppy. I wish it was a little bit more piney. But again, I like the West Coast IPAs. But this being a Pacific Northwest IPA, and it being advertised as citrus forward, it is just that, ladies and gentlemen. It is just that. Let's snap a quick picture for Untapped, and let's give a rating, and also see what the community, that's right, you, have to say about this as well. As my Canadian brother, Doak Orion, says, let's validate our parking. By the way, I cut the top of my finger off. Don't judge. Now, I know it's a little bit less in ABV compared to its Dreaming with Your Head Cut Off, its counterpart, which I do have as well, and will be doing a review on this one's sister beer, brother beer, they them beer, who the f knows these days. But you, the people, love this one. Now, A lot of you have actually said that the Dreaming with its head cut off, the other IPA, grapefruit citrus forward. So I'm actually more excited now to try that one, as I got them mixed up as I was looking on Untappd. The community loves this one. It got an average rating of 3.78, with a few people right here on the front page reviewing it as high as 4.5. It's interesting though, because it's gotten a score as low as 2.25 and a score as high as 4.5, which again, if you're gonna score something 4.5 on Untappd, it better be one of the best beers you've ever tried. For me, I'm giving it a solid 3.5. I really like this. I love these style of beers. I like bitter and hoppy forward beers. Now, a lot of people have described it as being hazy and malty. I don't know. I mean, does this look that hazy to you? I've certainly had way hazier beers. I don't know. There's a little bit of a hazy tone to it, but it's just compared to more of the like double hazy IPAs. I can't describe this to you guys as a hazy IPA. Is it super malty? No. Is it a little bit? Sure, but I don't know. I don't agree necessarily with a lot of what the community has said recently on this one. Buddy who rated it 4 out of 5 says, pretty dang good. Bro, if you're gonna rate something 4 out of 5, you gotta give me some more juice than that. But I gave it a solid 3.5. I wrote that I love the grapefruit forward citrus choice and taste, but I wish it was more hoppy. If anything, I wish it was a little bit more malty, but an interesting range on this one. I wonder if some of the people who rated it so low are just not a fan of this style of IPA and were hoping that it'd be, upon reading it, more fruity, more sweet, because it's not sweet. It really isn't. Now, it's a balanced citrus and fruit flavor, but it's not sweet. The more I sip on it, actually, the more I wish I wrote that it was refreshing. Because this is a refreshing, not too bitter, citrus forward Pacific Northwest IPA. I'm actually very excited to try, like I said, its counterpart, Dreaming with its head cut off, next. Maybe not in the next video, maybe not in the next beer review, but definitely I'm going to review that one soon. As always, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what beers, what style of beers, hell, what drinks, tier lists, reviews you want me to do next in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Cheers. Looks like my roommate actually drank all of the Dreaming with its head cut off. Whatever the fuck that one was called. This is, in fact, a nightmare. Well, that is it. That is the show. Before we close the doors here, though, I want to give a big shout out to our friends at Better Edge. Folks, if you have not signed up on Better Edge using our free, if you guys have not signed up to Better Edge and have claimed your free $20 signing bonus from us, yours truly, the Sota Pod, what are you doing with your life? That is right. Go to betteredge.com/Sota Pod to receive a $20 signing bonus from us. If you guys still don't know what Better Edge is, it is a free platform with legal betting in the state of Minnesota among 44 other states. Challenge your friends, make your picks weekly for whatever sport you love in addition to hockey. As you guys know, I'm a big MMA guy and I've been making my picks, my UFC picks, and challenging friends and other users on that app weekly now. It's more of a social media betting app than just your traditional betting app, and it is amazing. Local company as well. That is right. Local company started here in the great state of Minnesota, and Hoppy and myself will be hosting various competitions throughout the season once hockey starts back up. Wild game day competitions, bracket tournaments for the high school hockey tournament, for the NCAA, college tournaments, as well as some more big just sporting events even outside of the realm of hockey this season. So what are you waiting for? Go check us out, betteredge.com/Sota Pod. If you're already well versed in the app and you want to get more out of it, you can become a premium player. Premium players have access to free entry to pick'em contests, order grades, advanced order filterings, API access, and more. More details at betteredge.com/premium, but if you have not claimed your $20 signing bonus yet by getting on the app, go to betteredge.com/Sota Pod. Better Edge, a proud partner of the Sota Pod here. I want to give a big shout out and thank you to everybody tuning in on Google, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Folks, the best thing you can do today, any day, is give us 5 stars and a kind review on any of those platforms, especially Apple Podcasts, though, as that just helps us get in front of more listeners. And if you're watching on YouTube, please smash that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment, as it helps the algorithm. It helps YouTube push our videos, push our channel to get in front of more viewers. With that being said, though, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed the Hoppy Hour. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week coming up here in this beautiful, beautiful month of July. Signing off, I'm Isha Jerome alongside Seth Toupal. This has been the Sota Pod presented by Better Edge, 7th Avenue Pizza, Northland Vodka, and Waggle Golf. Don't fear, just drink some beer and stay wild.